Hi guys, turn your minds back to last year when there were strikes taking place on the railways. The Tory narrative was that train drivers earning lots of money were being greedy and attempting to hold the entire country to ransom. The politicians and their friends in the media attempted to smear people like Mick Lynch and his trade union, but failed as the public remained on the side of workers. They too understood the cost of living was having a massive impact on those on strike. Well, the Tory machine has now moved on to junior doctors, who are leaving the profession for better pay in other sectors or leaving Britain for better pay abroad. Here Dr. Mike Greenhall, a representative from the BMA junior doctors, set the record straight.
What we know, and indeed from other negotiations that are going on, that the only way to resolve things is by talking.
Absolutely.
So explain to people what has happened in relation to any discussions between you and the government.
So after our last round of industrial action, Mr. Steve Barclay met us for a short meeting, but in that time refused to give any sort of offer whatsoever. We've been clear since then that we're happy to meet at any time. We would still meet him over the bank holiday weekend before the industrial action next week. And if he was to bring a credible offer to us, it could still, even at this late stage of action.
But
so when you say...
He wants you to drop the top rate 35% pay rise going into the talks. Is that the precondition that you're saying he's put on this?
So the first thing to say is that isn't a pay rise. That is the amount that it would take to restore and reverse our pay cuts, to restore our pay. Now, the reason that it's such a large number is because the cuts has been so large, but in reality, what we're talking about here is a first-year doctor going from being paid £14 an hour to £19 an hour.
And on the preconditions?
So it's not a precondition. This is our opening position for negotiations, and we need a position back from the government. It's hard to negotiate when only one side is doing it, and we're not getting anything back from the government on that front. As I said, a credible offer from the government could lead to starting discussions. I absolutely agree with what you said. This is only going to be solved in the room and by talking, and now we need an offer from Mr. Barclay.
No.
See, the big problem here is that the media and the government are pushing this 35% pay rise. And, you know, most people are looking at that and going, oh, that's terrible. Like, you know, that's greedy. How can you expect a pay rise of 35%? But as was pointed out here, it's not 35% pay rise, it's a restoration of pay over the last number of years. So junior doctors are, and the real number here is going from £14 an hour to £19 an hour. See, people seem to think, and of course the media and their friends in government want people to believe this, that, you know, doctors earn lots of money. They're on huge salaries. And they imagine also that junior doctors are on huge salaries too. But £19 an hour is not enough for them. They have studied for years. They enter the NHS. They're working many hours. Many of them are close to burnout for £19 an hour. And what are they doing? If they can't survive on those wages, they're leaving the medical profession and working in something else. Then you're losing doctors. Or if they're offered better pay and conditions in places like Australia or Canada, they're leaving. And then you have fewer doctors. So what does the NHS do then? Well, it either has to bring in doctors from abroad to fill the gap, or it tries to recruit from the private sector. And the private sector charges an arm and a leg. So then the NHS budget is reduced because it has less money to spend on other things, because it's trying to fill the gap that exists. And this is a consequence of Tory cuts over the last number of years. So this 35% is restoring pay, removing these cuts, which would help keep some doctors. It's not going to keep all, because it should be the pay should be much higher, but it will stop some of the flow out of the profession. But they also need a pay rise. They're suffering the cost of living crisis, but the NHS is a core, fundamental part of society. health and education, I've said before, if you don't provide sufficient funding for health and education, if you don't prioritize those two, what is the point in having a government? So I think it's important that people understand that this 35% is not junior doctors demanding over the odds, or demanding more than they deserve. It's about restoring pay in order to keep doctors in place. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.